catacombs. Catacombs. There's some misconceptions about catacombs, what they are, what they did, what the purpose of it. The first thing I want you to know is this. Roman law allowed you to bury your dead. And it was respected by Roman law to bury your dead, no matter what your beliefs were, okay? So there's a misconception out there that Christians could not bury their dead. That's not true. Because they're like, oh, it was a secret place, and it wasn't secret. Everybody knew the how do you have a big catacomb and keep it secret from the people that are worshiping pagans? You're not going to do that, okay? So everybody knew about the catacombs. And it was by law that they had to bury their dead outside the city walls. In the pagan religion, a lot of people did cremation. In the Christian religion, they did not believe in cremation, and they believed in burying their dead. So that's one of the big differences between the two. So the catacombs were outside the city walls. And it wasn't strictly Christians either. There was other people that buried their dead in there. It wasn't really a secret meeting place. Again, like I said, everybody knew where they were, so it wasn't a secret. What it did do is it created space saving, because it was literally 3, 4, and sometimes 5 levels deep. And you're asking, how does that happen? Well, the limestone, the tufa, remember that word? T-O-F-U, tufu. That stone, what happens, it's really soft when you start carving into it, but then when the air hits it, it gets really rock hard. It's a lot harder. So it was a perfect environment for creating these catacombs. Again, we talked about the laws. The laws said that you had the right to be able to bury your dead, so they did bury their dead. And again, the soil was very unique, and it was very easy to dig into. So most of the digging happened between 200 and 400 AD. What you're looking at is the loculi. Loculi are these little niches. So loculi basically means a niche. In those niches is where they would place the body, okay? Not everybody had, sometimes they could put several bodies, like several family members in a niche. If you were very important and wealthy, sometimes you actually had a coffin or a sarcophagus in there, so a stone sarcophagus. You can imagine bringing all this stuff down. And some of these niches actually had like altars and worship areas in them. One of them that we saw actually had like a little altar, because when you bury, in the Catholic religion, when you bury somebody, you have a ceremony for it, and you have an altar for it. So they would actually perform some of these ceremonies right in these catacombs, where they would have their feast for their dead. So one thing else that this did do, it did provide a hiding place if they were being persecuted. So even though Constantine says there's no more persecutions of Christians, do you think it stopped immediately? No. And prior to this, if you're looking at 200 to 400, 200, when it was still, they were still, Christianity was not their religion, they were being persecuted. The catacombs was a place where they could hide, because it was a sacred place. And the Romans really couldn't come after them in a place that is considered hallowed like it was. So it did sometimes provide a hiding place. It also became a shrine to the saints, the people. How do you become a saint? I mean, I'm sure I'm close to being a saint, but how do you become a saint? What is a saint?
Canonized.
It's not, okay, that's a Christian. A Christian is a person that follows the ways of Christ, right? Okay, what's the difference between a Christian and a saint?
Is a saint like a good person?
A saint could sin. A saint is a good person, but they also are considered a person that has exceptional gifts, that are divine gifts. And sometimes they have what people believe the power to do miracles. There's a list of things that somebody has to do to be canonized as a saint. I think St. Teresa is, you have to have performed so many miracles before you can be considered a saint. So Saints are somebody, a lot of times, are somebody that has been martyred also. What's martyred?
When you're persecuted for a cause.
Well, when you're murdered.
Murdered, yeah, more than just persecuted, but put to death somehow. A lot of times, as we continue into our studies, you're gonna find that people that are martyred, usually when they are depicted in a picture, will have the symbol of how they were martyred, okay? Catherine, St. Catherine, I think was martyred on the wheel. I'd have to check my book. So what they do is take a wheel, they stretch them out, and they let the birds come and get you, and animals come and get you. And so when you see St. Catherine, she'll have this wheel a lot of times being depicted. Does anybody know what the symbol of St. Peter's is?
Would Mother Teresa be considered a saint?
Not yet.
They're working on the,
They are. She
and so,
has
last
to be.
pope too, John Paul.
John Paul was the one that was working on getting St. Teresa, or Sister Teresa.
Do you
Mother Teresa.
have to
Canada.
be murdered to be martyred?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have to
They
be
have to-
martyred to become
they're
a
gonna have
saint,
to-
they're gonna.
No, you don't
Yes.
have to be martyred to
Yes.
become a saint.
If we have to murder
Mother
them.
Teresa was.
No. You do not have to be a saint, but a lot of the saints were martyred.
Okay.
And martyr means you die for a cause. Because right now, the suicide bombers that one of the ways that they get them to be a suicide bomber is they believe they die a martyr then for the cause of Islam. That's part of the indoctrination to get someone to become a suicide bomber. They believe that they're a martyr, and then they can use that death of that person as to get more people.
So like with Saint Nicholas, an actual saint. They know like Santa
Yeah,
Claus.
he's actually a person, yes. St. Nicholas was a person. St. Nicholas was a person that came from an extremely wealthy family. And actually, you know, a better example that I probably know more about, and you guys are going to see this, is St. Francis. Maybe we talked about St. Francis last year. St. Francis came from extremely wealthy families. He decided that this was ridiculous, all these people were starving, and the big scene is that he was standing in the streets and he denounced his riches in front of his father and stripped and dropped his clothes. And when we're in the CZ, there's a spot that supposedly happened, and it's depicted in the church when we go to St. Francis
Yep.
Cathedral.
And that's
After
who the
that,
Pope named
he
himself after.
went and he gave his life, and he had a gift with the animals, and he had a gift with people, and he started, is it stigmas? Stigmatas in his hands, and that was part of what his sign of, his miraculous sign, is he had the marks of Christ in his hands. And they just came, and they were extremely painful, so he had the nail marks. I don't remember if they were in his feet too, or if they were just in his hands. But I don't know if there's documentation of healing people or that kind of thing, but that's how St. Francis became a saint.
How did they get Santa Claus from St. Nicholas?
St. Nicholas, he was a guy that went out, and he gave away his riches too. So he would give to needy families. And it started out with one, I think it started out with a family that he didn't have enough money for a dowry for his daughter to marry, so he gave that money so his daughter could marry. And then he started giving and giving and giving and giving. So, St. Nicholas. It's actually, the saints are very fascinating if you get into them. But anyhow, we're getting off track a little bit here. So, martyred, a lot of these people are martyred, but we're not totally off track because St. Peter was buried in one of these. And we are going to talk about St. Peter's when we get to his church. So, some of these are extremely elaborate. I want you to notice that they actually use the architectural knowledge that they had when they used up top. They have columns, they have arches. We did our Roman arches. We have our columns over here. We just have a plain Doric column in there. This would have been a family. The niches that the big areas that they carved out, these would have been family members that would have been in there. By the way, the popes, a few popes have been buried in the catacombs too. St. Peter is considered the first pope. Roman first buried their dead in the family catacombs, and again, they were located outside the city walls. Those are two important facts. They were protected by the law, which is another important fact, which we talked about. And again, the Romans preferred the cremation. The Christians restored the burial. There's several chambers underneath these. I mean, it's like a maze. I would get lost down there. And again, they talk about that these would have been a place where they did all their worshiping and all this kind of stuff. I don't think people really hung out down here for hours and hours and hours. Why?
It's creepy.
What? Megan, did you say it?
It's creepy.
It's creepy, but also people are dead. And what happens to dead flesh?
They smell.
Yeah. So, I don't know if hanging out down there with the dead people as they're rotting is such a great thing. And you know, the death rate is really high during this time period because of the plague that goes in and out and because of diseases and all that kind of stuff. So I imagine that there's probably a lot of people that are being buried down there. Again, here's an example of a body, and I believe this is the sarcophagus underneath with a body on top. Again, they would put multiple bodies in one little area.
So they just like set them in the niche out in the open. It wasn't like there's a stone that goes over the top. Or...
Some of them did have stones that went over the top of these, and then they would be marked too. So they would kind of seal them up also. To give you an idea, the first level was between 35 and 49 feet below